He buried his wife under the willow tree last spring. Thought grief would kill him too. But the woman he saved wasn't just a stranger. She was a promise, a curse, and a question with no easy answer. Now they call her his bride. He just wanted silence. The sack was wet with blood. Flies already circled its rim, lazily bumping against stained burlap as if they too were too tired for violence. The rest of her was tied at the hands, ankles scraped raw from being dragged, ribs rising too fast, too shallow. She made no sound, but she was alive. That was the first thing Jeremiah Hale noticed as he dismounted, rifle slung behind his shoulder and spade still strapped to the saddle. He hadn't meant to find anyone. Just came out to dig up a stubborn fence post. Instead, he found her. The desert wind picked up, carrying the sharp stink of iron and sweat. Jeremiah crouched beside her, calloused hands reaching slowly like she might vanish if he moved too fast. He untied the sack, careful not to jerk the twine. When it finally came free, the cloth clung to her face like skin peeling away. Her hair was black, matted with blood at the scalp. Her lips were cracked, cheeks sunken, but her eyes, when they blinked against the sudden light, were wide and full of something between terror and disbelief. Jeremiah stepped back. "Name?" he asked, voice low. She tried to speak, then coughed, a sound like stones breaking under a wheel. Her mouth opened again, but no name came. Just a whisper of a breath before her eyes rolled back and she collapsed, limbs folding like cloth. Jeremiah didn't hesitate. He lifted her into the saddle and turned his horse toward the hills. His cabin wasn't far, but the way the woman felt in his arms, light as air, cold as old ashes, he wasn't sure she'd make it the full mile. The ride was quiet, too quiet. Even the wind hushed as if waiting for something terrible to fall. The door of the cabin creaked open under his boot. It had been 2 seasons since anyone else passed through it. His wife had died in the back room, childbirth gone to ruin, and since then Jeremiah hadn't lit more than 1 lantern at a time. He laid the woman down on the cot near the fire and got to work. Warm water, clean rags. Broth simmered low over a flame while he cleaned the gash on her forehead and the welts around her wrists. When she stirred again, it was dusk. Her body jerked like she'd forgotten where she was. Then her gaze fixed on Jeremiah across the room, and her whole frame went still. "You're safe," he said without looking up. She didn't believe him. He could see it in her eyes. "Name," he said again. Still nothing. "You speak English." She blinked once. He sighed and sat back. The soup had gone cold. "They left you to die," he said quietly, "tied and blind under a bluff. No tracks leading out. No horses. Whoever did that didn't plan on you being found." She winced. Slowly her hand went to her throat. She mimed pulling something up, a gesture rough and desperate. "Can't speak?" he asked. Her head moved slightly, neither nod nor shake. Maybe she didn't know. He tried again. "Did you escape?" No answer. "Were you taken?" "Nothing." Jeremiah exhaled hard through his nose. "Fine, don't talk, but eat something before you starve." She watched every movement as he brought her the bowl, like a coyote waiting to see if the trap would snap. She took the spoon with shaking hands but fed herself. He took that as a good sign. People dying didn't bother with food. He didn't ask anything else that night. Just gave her a blanket, moved his bedroll to the other side of the cabin, and sat near the fire, knife in hand, carving small notches into the handle like he always did when his mind got too loud. She didn't sleep. Neither did he. By morning she was gone. Jeremiah found the door ajar and snow melting where her bare feet had left prints. She hadn't taken anything but the blanket. He followed the trail for a mile, then 2, before it ended in a cluster of rocks near the ridge. He scanned the horizon, jaw clenched, heart hammering. Then a shape shifted behind the stones. He approached slowly, rifle across his chest. She was there, curled tight as a fist, eyes wide with fury and fear. "I told you," he muttered, "you ain't safe out here." That's when the arrow flew. It thunked into the dirt inches from his boot. Jeremiah spun, rifle raised, but the bluff above them was already empty. He grabbed her by the wrist, not hard but firm, and pulled her back toward the trail. She didn't resist. Her breathing was ragged, hands trembling. When they returned to the cabin, he bolted the door behind them. "They're watching," he said flatly. "You're being hunted." Still she said nothing, but her eyes stayed on him longer this time, not with trust, but something closer to recognition, like she'd seen men like him before and he'd done better than most. Days passed, the storm returned. They spoke in gestures and glances. He tried names out loud: Mary, Anna, Clara, but she never reacted, until one day as he split wood outside, she stepped out onto the porch and pointed at the rising sun. "Sina," she rasped, the word like a stone dragged across gravel. He turned. "Sina, that your name?" She nodded once. Then she fainted again. That night Jeremiah sat by her side. "You got people?" he asked. "Family?" Sina said nothing, but her hand drifted over her heart, then down to her belly. He frowned. "You pregnant?" She shook her head slowly, then nodded once. Confusion mixed with pain. He didn't press. "Not yet." 2 nights later they came. It started with smoke, thin, acrid, not from his chimney. Then drums, faint but steady, like a heartbeat from beneath the earth. Jeremiah opened the door and saw them on the ridge, torches and shapes, faces painted, some on horseback, others cloaked in animal hides. He turned back. Sina stood behind him, eyes wide. "Yours?" he asked. She didn't answer. Then the drums stopped, and a single rider approached, slow and proud. He dismounted, walked straight up to the porch, and set something down at Jeremiah's feet, a leather bundle soaked in blood. Inside it, a broken arrow, a bone carving, and a braid of black hair. Jeremiah looked up. The man spoke in a dialect Jeremiah didn't understand. Sina did, her eyes filled with tears. She stepped forward. "No," Jeremiah said, "you ain't going anywhere." But Sina reached down, touched the bundle, then pressed her hand to her own braid. She turned to Jeremiah, and for the first time she spoke clearly. "I was taken. They thought me dead, but I live." The man nodded solemnly, then turned and gestured toward the fires on the ridge. Sina's voice trembled. "They say you saved me." Jeremiah frowned. "I reckon I did." Her lips quivered. "Then by right I am yours now." The ground felt like it shifted beneath his boots. "What?" She nodded. "Bride by blood debt." He staggered back a step. "I don't know, that ain't." Sina bowed her head. "They will not take me back, unless you send me or claim me." Jeremiah looked out at the fires, then at the woman he'd found near dead under the sack, then back at the man still waiting, unmoving. It wasn't a question of want, not anymore. The drums began again. The drums didn't stop. They didn't quicken, didn't change pace, just kept pulsing like a second heartbeat beneath the ground, steady and relentless, like the people on the ridge were waiting for the earth to answer. Jeremiah Hale had heard many things in his time: gunfire, screams, the distant thunder of hooves, but never anything like this. The sound didn't echo. It stayed low and flat, like a hand pressing on your chest. Sina stood still beside him, one hand resting lightly against the doorframe, the other pressed over her stomach. Her eyes were unreadable, not afraid, not exactly, but resigned in a way that made something tighten in Jeremiah's throat. She accepted this. The ritual, the debt, the decision that now sat like a stone between them, and he hadn't even known the rules until they were being played out at his feet. "I didn't ask for this," Jeremiah muttered, still staring at the fires on the ridge. Sina didn't reply. She didn't have to. The man who had delivered the tokens remained where he stood, a few yards from the porch, unmoving, patient, as if time meant nothing to him, as if this wasn't a negotiation but something already decided. Jeremiah took a slow breath. He bent down, picked up the bloodied bundle and turned it over in his hands. The arrow, the braid, the carving, all tokens of something he couldn't name but felt the weight of just the same. They weren't threats. They were traditions. Currency in a language he didn't speak but one Sina understood, and now so did he, just enough to feel trapped. He looked at her, and if I say no. Her eyes flicked to the horizon, then they take me. Even if I try to stop them. They'll take me anyway. The fire cracked behind them. Somewhere out in the dark, a coyote cried. Jeremiah's hand twitched toward the rifle leaning against the wall, but he didn't touch it. That wasn't the answer here. Not tonight. He turned back to Sina. You believe in this, right? He asked. She was quiet a long moment. Then she whispered, I believe in what it protects. He swallowed hard. There were still ashes in his heart from the last time he called someone wife. He didn't know if those ashes could ever warm again, but this wasn't about love. Not yet. It was about shelter, about standing between someone and the fire that wanted to swallow her whole. All right, he said finally, I'll do it. Sina flinched. I'll claim you, he said, if that's what keeps you safe. The man outside heard. He turned without a word and walked back toward the firelight, slow and deliberate. As he reached the ridge, the drums stopped. Silence fell again, vast and immediate. Jeremiah closed the door. Neither of them spoke for a long while. He put another log on the fire. Sina sat on the edge of the cot, her hands in her lap, fingers twisting the edge of her sleeve. He poured water into the tin kettle, set it over the flame, and stared at it until it boiled. I don't know what this makes us, he said finally, but I reckon it makes us stuck with each other for a while. Sina looked up, a flicker of something passing through her eyes. Not fear, not gratitude, something more complicated, like hope with splinters. I do not expect anything from you, she said softly. I didn't think you did. But thank you. He nodded once. That was the end of it for now. By morning the snow was gone. The air was sharp, cold, but dry. Jeremiah woke to find Sina already outside, gathering firewood. Her movements were slow but sure. She didn't look back at the cabin once, just moved through the trees like she belonged to them. He watched her for a while before stepping onto the porch. You don't have to do that, he called. I know, she said, but I want to. He didn't argue. The days passed quiet but not heavy. She never asked about his wife, and he never asked about the people on the ridge. They shared silence the way some folks shared soup, carefully, with both hands. Then the offerings began. The first came 2 days after the claiming, left at the edge of the property line, a bundle of cured meat, herbs, and pelts. No note, no tracks, just gifts placed like tribute, or payment, or perhaps a warning. Jeremiah didn't touch it at first. He stared at it from the porch, arms crossed, jaw clenched. Sina stepped beside him. They honor you for what you did. I didn't do it for honor. I know. He picked up the bundle anyway. Inside, he found a bone charm tucked between the furs, carved into the shape of a fox. He held it out. This means something. Sina nodded. It means they're watching and they approve. He didn't like that. Approval meant expectation, meant pressure, meant more of this strange law he hadn't signed up for but was already bound to. Still, he hung the charm above the door. That night Sina lit a fire and spoke for a long time, not in English but in the lilting cadence of her people's tongue, soft, rhythmic, almost musical. Jeremiah didn't ask what she said. He just listened. The sound of it filled the cabin in a way nothing else had since Sarah died. It didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like something finding shape in a house that had been hollow too long. Later, after the fire dimmed, she asked, "You loved her, didn't you?" He didn't answer right away, just stared into the embers. "Yeah," he said at last. "I see her in your eyes still." He didn't look at her. She died in that room. I know. She never saw our son. Sina's breath caught. You had a child. He nodded, didn't breathe more than a minute. Doctor never made it through the storm. It was just me and her. She said nothing, just reached out and laid a hand on his. He didn't pull away. A week later, a new figure appeared at the edge of the trees. A woman this time, older, wrapped in deep red robes, her face painted with vertical lines that shimmered faintly even in the shade. Sina stood the moment she saw her, elder. Jeremiah rose too, unsure whether to reach for his rifle or his hat. The woman didn't speak. She simply stepped forward and held out a small object wrapped in black cloth. Sina took it, unwrapped it slowly. Inside, a necklace made of thin carved stones, symbols etched into each one. She gives her blessing, Sina said, voice shaking, and her warning. Jeremiah frowned, warning. Sina looked up. The right you accepted is not without cost. The elder turned then, disappearing into the trees without another word. Later that night, Sina explained what she meant. There were stories, she said, of men who saved women not meant to be saved, of unions sealed by the old laws, binding, sacred, and cursed. Some say the spirits watch, that they test these bonds. Test how? Through fire, through loss, through trials of the heart. Jeremiah scoffed. Life already does that. Yes, Sina said, but this time someone else is watching. He didn't like the sound of that, not one bit. But he didn't back away either. Another week passed, then two. They worked side by side, slowly mending the cabin, the land, and something else between them neither dared name yet. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was more than survival, a rhythm, a pattern, the start of something fragile. Then the fire came. Not the hearth, not the stove. A blaze from the east ridge, burning fast, angry, hungry. Jeremiah smelled it before he saw the smoke. He grabbed Sina's hand without thinking and they ran. The fire tore through the trees like a beast loosed from a cage. Animals scattered. The sky turned orange. Sina gasped, stumbling as ash filled her lungs. Jeremiah pulled her close, shielded her with his coat, and dragged her toward the creek. They barely made it. As the flames closed in, he held her tight, both of them soaked and coughing, watching as the line of fire devoured everything up to the edge of the water and then stopped, as if held back by some invisible hand. When it was over, the land smoldered, blackened, charred. His cabin stood untouched. But something had been left on the doorstep. A stone perfectly round, split down the center. Sina stared at it in silence. What does it mean? Jeremiah asked. Her voice was a whisper. Trial 1 has begun. They rebuilt in silence, not because there were no words to say, but because neither of them trusted what might slip through their lips if they let their thoughts out loud. The sky was a haze of gray, the air still thick with smoke and the scent of scorched pine. Jeremiah stood at the edge of the porch and looked out at the surrounding woods, what was left of them. Charred stumps, fallen limbs, blackened earth. And right there in the middle of it all, his cabin, untouched, like the fire had swept around it on purpose. Sina moved beside him, her footsteps nearly soundless on the soot-dusted boards. She held the split stone in her palm like it was still warm, like it might speak if she listened long enough. She hadn't said more than a few words since the fire, and Jeremiah didn't push. He felt something shift that night, not just in the land, but in her. You ever seen something like that? He asked. Sina turned the stone over in her hand and said, No. He waited, but that was all she gave. Jeremiah rubbed the back of his neck, watching the scorched tree line. Wasn't natural. Fire doesn't move like that. No, she agreed, it doesn't. You think it was them. She was quiet, but her fingers tightened around the stone. I think it was something older than them, she said finally. Something older than me, than you, than names. Jeremiah exhaled, slow and rough, and this is part of the trial. She nodded. How many more? She looked at him then, and what he saw in her eyes was enough to make the hair on his arms rise. "3," she whispered, "always 3. He didn't ask what the others might be. He had a feeling they'd find out soon enough. They spent the next few days clearing debris, salvaging what they could. The garden was gone, but the root cellar had survived. The barn was scorched but standing. Sina spent long hours mending charred beams and retying bundles of herbs with shaking hands, her lips moving silently as she worked. At night she sang. Soft, low, wordless. Melodies Jeremiah didn't recognize but felt in his chest like a memory he never lived. And each night he sat closer to the sound, as if some part of him might find warmth there. He hadn't touched her, not since the claiming. They moved like shadows near one another, connected by something invisible but undeniably real. He found himself watching her hands when she worked, listening for her breath at night, waiting for her footsteps on the porch in the morning. And still, something between them held. On the 5th day after the fire, the dream started. Jeremiah woke before dawn, heart pounding, throat dry, the taste of ash still thick on his tongue. He didn't remember the details, only flashes, a woman's face not Sina's, flames, a cradle screaming. He stepped outside into the cold and breathed in the smoke-laced air. The horizon was still red from the remnants of the blaze, like the earth hadn't quite healed. Behind him, the door creaked. "You saw it, didn't you?" Sina said. He turned. Her face was pale, the skin beneath her eyes smudged with exhaustion. "Didn't dream, not really," he said. "Yes, you did." He didn't argue. "They come to test your heart," she said, "to see if it still mourns, if it still bleeds for what it lost." Jeremiah's jaw clenched. "I didn't ask to be tested." "No one does," she replied. "But if your heart belongs to the dead, it cannot belong to the living." The words hit like a whip. He turned away. "This whole thing, it's madness." "Yes," she said, "it is." And then she stepped back inside, leaving him alone in the cold. That afternoon, the second trial arrived, not as fire, not as dream, but as flesh. Jeremiah spotted the rider before the sound of hooves reached the cabin. A figure, dark against the snowless rise, cutting through the air like a blade. As the rider came closer, Jeremiah's breath caught. He knew that horse. And he knew the man on it. Beckett Lang. A name Jeremiah hadn't heard in 3 years, not since the day his wife was buried and the debts came calling. Beckett had been a rancher once, then a bounty man, then something lower than both. The kind of man who traded favors for blood and never showed up unless someone else had paid the fee. He rode like a snake in a man's skin, slow, calculating, and with the smile of someone who already knew what he was going to take from you. "Jeremiah Hale," Beckett called as he rode up, grinning like a man stepping onto his own porch. "Well, I'll be. You're harder to find than a preacher in a saloon." Jeremiah didn't move, didn't offer a hand, just said, "What do you want?" Beckett dismounted. He looked around, whistled low. "Heard there was a fire, thought maybe you were gone. Seems I was late to the funeral." Jeremiah's hand rested lightly on the shotgun near the door. "Try again." Beckett's eyes glinted. "Got word you took in a woman from the ridge." Jeremiah's silence was answer enough. "Well now," Beckett drawled. "That's interesting. See, there's a price on women like her. Certain folks think they don't belong on this side of the line." Jeremiah stepped off the porch. "Leave," he said. But Beckett just laughed. "You think this is about her. It ain't, it's about you, about what you owe." "I don't owe you a damn thing." "Don't owe me," Beckett said, stepping closer. "Owe them." Jeremiah's blood ran cold. That debt was settled. "Was it?" Beckett tilted his head. "You borrowed money to bury your wife. You didn't pay it back. But now you've got gifts pouring in, pelts, food, protection. Seems to me someone thinks you're worth something again." Behind them, Sina appeared in the doorway. Her eyes locked on Beckett, unreadable. Beckett's smile widened. "There she is." Jeremiah moved in front of her before he even realized it. "Let me guess," Beckett said. "The old laws say she's yours now, but what happens if someone challenges the right?" "You wouldn't dare," Jeremiah said. Beckett smirked. "Maybe I would. Maybe I want to see what happens when the spirits pick sides." Jeremiah raised the shotgun. "Get off my land." Beckett didn't flinch. "This ain't over." He mounted, turned, and rode off. Cena stepped beside Jeremiah. Who was he? "Ghost," Jeremiah said. But Cena looked toward the trees and shook her head. "No, ghosts don't bleed." That night the wind howled, not like a storm, like something calling. The second trial had begun. Jeremiah dreamed again. This time he saw Sarah, his wife, standing in the doorway holding something small, a bundle, a child. Her face was empty, hollow. She said nothing, just stared at him as fire swept through the room. He reached for her, but she turned away. He woke choking on air. Cena sat by the fire, watching the flames. "He came in your dream," she said, "didn't he?" Jeremiah didn't answer. She looked at him. "You cannot carry the dead and expect the living to walk beside you." His hands were shaking. "What do they want from me?" he asked. She reached out, took one of his hands, held it tight. "They want to know if you can choose," she said. "Between what?" Cena's voice broke. "Between what's gone and what still remains." Jeremiah looked at her, and for the first time saw the cost in her eyes. This wasn't just about him. She was caught in it too, tethered to a choice neither of them had made, bound by ancient rights and the eyes of spirits that judged in silence. He leaned forward and pressed his forehead to hers. "I don't know what I feel yet," he whispered. "I don't need love," she replied, "only truth." Outside the wind screamed. And in the dark something watched. The cold had teeth. It crept in through the cracks in the walls, curled under the floorboards, and nested deep in the marrow. The fire burned hot, but it couldn't touch the chill that had settled in Jeremiah's chest. He lay awake long after Cena had fallen asleep beside the hearth, her hand still curled around the small stone she refused to let go of. He watched the flames shrink and flare, and he listened, to the wind, to the woods, to the whisper of ghosts pressing against the seams of the house. The second trial hadn't passed. Beckett was just the smoke before the real burn, and it was coming. Before dawn, Jeremiah was already saddling the mule. "I need to ride into town," he said. Cena stood in the doorway, wrapped in his coat, her eyes hollow from sleep. "It's too soon." "I need supplies, ammunition, tools, rope. We lost more in the fire than I realized." She said nothing for a long moment, then handed him a folded strip of hide from her satchel. "Don't trade this, keep it on you." "What is it?" "Protection," she said, "sort of." "Sort of." Cena didn't smile. "It only works if you still believe in something." Jeremiah tucked it into his coat. "What if I do?" "Then keep it anyway," she said. "Something might believe in you." The mule groaned as he mounted. The road was frostbitten and narrow, winding through the hills and past the old pines still blackened by fire. It had been months since Jeremiah had seen Hollow Bend, the nearest town, but the name itself felt bitter now. It wasn't a place you went for salvation. It was a place you went to lose what little you had left. Still, he needed the things he couldn't find in the woods, and maybe, just maybe, answers. The town hadn't changed much. Two dusty rows of buildings facing each other like dueling gunslingers. A saloon, a smithy, the general store, a chapel that hadn't rung a bell since the war. Jeremiah dismounted and hitched the mule outside the store. The moment he stepped inside, the talking stopped. He scanned the faces, men he'd known for years, some since childhood. They stared at him now like he'd returned from the grave. A few nodded, most didn't. "Jeremiah Hale," came a voice from behind the counter. Old Tom Simmons, half-blind, hard of hearing, but still sharp when it came to coin. "Tom," Jeremiah said, pulling a list from his coat. Tom took the paper but didn't glance down. Heard you had company. Jeremiah didn't answer. Tom raised a brow. Not many rich folk come down the mountain without a reason. She didn't come down, Jeremiah said. She was taken. Tom grunted. And now you're wed. Wasn't my choice. Don't think it matters. That tribe of hers, they follow the old rules. Blood rules. Jeremiah folded his arms. You know them. Know of 'em. My great-uncle traded pelts with their grandfathers. Said they never lied, never stole. But if they gave you something, you best treat it like the sky gave it to you, or you'd find yourself cursed quiet and fast. Jeremiah felt the hide in his coat pocket, warm against his chest. Tom leaned in. Careful, Jeremiah. There's things in those hills that don't forget. I didn't ask for this. You didn't stop it either. The bell above the door rang as a new figure entered, slim, clean-shaven, wearing a red kerchief and boots too polished for winter travel. Sheriff Langston, Tom said, nodding. Jeremiah turned stiffly. He hadn't seen Langston in nearly a year. The man hadn't aged, just got sharper, thinner in the face, eyes like bayonets. I hear you got yourself a bride, the sheriff said flatly. Jeremiah didn't respond. Langston stepped closer. Now I don't care much about tribal rights, but I do care about stability. That girl of yours, her people have a reputation, and they're watching. How do you know that? Jeremiah asked. Langston smiled without warmth. Because they left this. He pulled a strip of bark from his coat. Symbols carved deep, same as the one Cena carried. It stank of resin and ash. They're warning you, Langston said. Stay in line, don't break the bond. I'm not looking to break anything. The sheriff tucked the bark away. Then I'd suggest you don't ride into town without her again. Jeremiah's jaw tightened. That a threat? Langston shrugged. Call it advice. You might have married her, but you didn't marry alone. Outside, the wind shifted, cold, sour. Jeremiah bought his supplies and rode out before the sun crested. The trail home was quieter than it should have been. Even the birds had stopped calling. Halfway up the ridge, the trees changed. The snow looked untouched, yet there were no tracks. The silence deepened, and then he saw it. A circle, painted in ash on the trunk of a pine, low, deliberate. He dismounted and walked to it. The symbol was simple, a spiral like an eye. At its center, a hole gouged deep into the bark. Behind him, something moved. He spun shotgun up, but there was nothing. Then, a whisper. Not in his ears, in his blood. He turned and ran. By the time he reached the cabin, night was falling fast. The sky burned orange at the edges like it had been bruised. He burst through the door and found the house empty. Cena. Nothing. He checked the cellar, the shed, the woods behind the barn. Gone. But there, by the edge of the woods, a new symbol had been drawn in the snow. Circles, spirals, and a single handprint. Small, bloody. Jeremiah dropped to his knees. No, he whispered. Behind him, something creaked. He turned fast and saw her. Cena stood just beyond the tree line, bare feet in the snow, her hair loose, eyes black as coal. Her mouth was moving, but no sound came. She lifted her arm, pointed behind him. Jeremiah turned. A figure stood at the edge of the porch. Not Beckett. Not the sheriff. Someone else. Old, cloaked, holding a staff carved with the same spiral. The third trial. Jeremiah raised the shotgun. The figure didn't flinch. You cannot stop what has already begun, the figure said, voice like gravel soaked in rain. You broke the circle. I haven't broken anything. You doubted, that is enough. Cena appeared beside Jeremiah suddenly, as if the woods had breathed her out. I didn't leave, she said softly. They took me to test me. Did you pass? I don't know. The old man stepped forward. Now the choice is his. Sina didn't look at Jeremiah, then let him choose. The world froze. The snow stopped falling. The air went silent. Jeremiah's chest pounded. What am I choosing? He asked. The old man raised the staff, and the earth shook beneath them. You choose whether to carry the dead or to walk with the living. Jeremiah thought of Sarah, her voice, her eyes, her laugh. He thought of Sina, her hands callous but soft, her song, her silence. He thought of the fire, the dream, the blood. He stepped forward. I choose. I choose. But the words died in Jeremiah's throat. The snow shifted beneath his boots. The figure with the staff tilted his head as if listening to something only he could hear. Sina didn't flinch, didn't breathe, didn't move. The forest around them stood still, not waiting, not watching, but holding its breath, as if the world understood this moment better than he did. I choose the living, Jeremiah said finally. He wasn't sure where the words came from. They didn't feel like his. But as soon as he spoke them, the old man gave a nod, slight but final, like a judge who just heard a verdict he already expected. And then the old man turned and vanished into the trees. No sound, no footprint, no parting of branches, just gone. The wind returned all at once, howling through the pines like it had been caged too long. Sina staggered forward, grabbing Jeremiah's arm. You meant it, she whispered, that choice. I did, he said, though his voice felt thin. I don't know what it means, but I did. Sina looked back toward the trees. Then everything changes now. Jeremiah wanted to ask what she meant, but her knees buckled before he could, and he caught her just as she collapsed. She was burning. By the time he got her inside and laid her on the cot, her skin had gone pale and slick with sweat. Her hands trembled violently. Her eyes rolled beneath her lids, and she mumbled in a language he didn't recognize, though it felt old. Too old. Jeremiah sat by her all night, sponging her forehead, stoking the fire, whispering her name even when she couldn't hear him. At one point, her fingers curled around his wrist like a drowning woman gripping rope. You're not alone, he said. I'm here. At dawn, she opened her eyes. Not black anymore, brown, human, fragile. I dreamed of fire, she whispered, but it wasn't death, it was birth. Jeremiah nodded, though he didn't understand. You're safe now. But Sina shook her head slowly. Safe isn't what we're meant to be. He didn't press her, not yet. By midday she could sit up. By evening she was walking again, weak but steady. She didn't speak much. She watched the woods constantly, not with fear but with awareness, like she expected them to speak. And they did. Not with voices, with signs. Jeremiah began to notice them too. Stones stacked in the corners of the barn, always in threes. Marks in the bark of trees he'd passed 100 times but never seen this way. Symbols carved deep. Warnings. Messages. One night he woke to find Sina outside, barefoot in the snow, staring at the moon. You'll freeze, he said, stepping beside her. I needed to hear, she whispered. Hear what? Sina turned to him, her eyes reflecting moonlight like glass. The council has named you husband, not just in blood but in fate. You chose life, and now you bear its burden. I thought I already was. Sina shook her head. You're still holding on to her. Jeremiah looked away. I can't just forget Sarah. You don't have to, but you can't live beside a ghost and call it a home. The words struck deep. He wanted to argue, wanted to defend what little he had left of his wife, but instead he asked, did you love someone before this? Sina was quiet for a long time. Yes, she said finally, and no. Jeremiah waited. In my tribe, love is chosen, not stumbled into. It's claimed through trial. I thought I loved him. I was wrong. He failed. How? He ran when the blood right came. Left me hooded and bound at a stranger's door. left me to be given like a lamb. Jeremiah's throat tightened. I'm sorry. She looked up at him. You didn't run, even when you wanted to. He couldn't reply. He wasn't sure she was right. A dozen times he'd nearly packed her things and sent her off, rationalized it, made it clean. But he hadn't. Now, even the thought of her leaving twisted something ugly in his gut. The next morning, Sina painted something on the doorframe in ash and crushed berries. For protection, she said. From what? From what comes when the choice has been made. Jeremiah didn't understand until the dreams started. They came with the snowstorms, thick, blinding blizzards that came out of nowhere and lingered too long. In the dreams, he was standing in a circle of fire. The forest burned. Sarah stood across from him, her face covered in soot, her eyes hollow. She's not yours, she said, voice echoing like thunder. You think you're healing, but you're only burying. Jeremiah would wake drenched in sweat, Sina holding his hand each time, silent. You're dreaming what the spirits want you to see, she said one night. They're not punishing you. They're showing you what still binds you. I buried her, he whispered. I mourned her. But you still talk to her. Jeremiah wanted to deny it, but he couldn't. Every night he still whispered to Sarah before sleep. Every time he looked at Sina, some part of him felt like he was betraying something sacred. One night, after a storm so fierce it tore the roof shingles loose, he stood in the barn and shouted at the rafters. I'm sorry, he yelled. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. I'm sorry I still miss you, but I'm still here. The wind screamed back, snapping the door open and slamming it shut. When he turned around, Sina was standing there, watching, crying. He didn't go to her, he just stood there, let the silence stretch. Then she said something he'd never heard from her before. I'm afraid. He moved to her then, wrapped her in his arms. Me too, he said. That night they didn't sleep. They lay beside each other, no fire, no light, no words, just two broken people trying to breathe the same air without drowning. But peace never lasts in the mountains. It began with a knock, just like the one that brought Sina to his door all those weeks ago. Jeremiah opened it, expecting a branch in the wind. Instead, it was a woman. Older, wrapped in thick furs, eyes like Sina's, only harder. She didn't speak, just pushed past him and stared at Sina. Mother, Sina said, almost gasping. The woman turned to Jeremiah. She bore the trial, she bore the fever, she bears your scent, she is yours now. Jeremiah didn't move. But the tribe must see, you will come with us. Sina reached for his hand. You don't have to, not if you're not ready. He looked at her, really looked, at the scar near her ear, the soft curve of her mouth, the fear tucked behind her spine. He remembered the fire, the snow, the first cry of the baby she'd carried through the storm. I am, he said. The mother gave a small nod. They left the cabin by moonlight. 3 days through the woods, the path winding then vanishing. The farther they went, the more the world felt like it belonged to someone else. Sounds came and went. Shadows moved without source. When they arrived, the tribe was waiting. Dozens of them, painted in ash and ochre, silent, standing in a circle around a fire that reached higher than the trees. A man stepped forward. Old, broad-shouldered, with eyes that looked through bone. You are the widower. I am. You carry grief. I do. You carry hope. Jeremiah looked at Sina. I want to. The man raised his hands. Then we begin the fourth trial, the binding. Sina's hand tightened in his. And then they took her from him. Dragged her into the circle, hands on her shoulders, lips chanting old syllables that made Jeremiah's teeth ache. The fire roared higher. The old man turned to him. You chose the living. Now you must live through her pain, through her scars, through her death if it comes. What does that mean? But no one answered. The chanting grew louder. Sina screamed, and everything turned black. Jeremiah ran toward the fire. Or tried to. Something caught him mid-step, a force, invisible but iron-heavy, locking his limbs and freezing his breath in his lungs. His feet rooted into the earth as if the very soil had claimed him. He watched helpless as the tribe encircled Sina. She was on her knees now, her body trembling in violent waves. Her scream had stopped, but the silence was worse. It was the silence of a woman whose soul had left ahead of her body. The fire arched unnaturally, leaning toward her like a predator about to strike. And then she vanished. One blink she was there, next gone, no smoke, no ashes, just absence. Jeremiah's knees buckled. He hit the frozen dirt, breath knocking from his chest. Sina! Nothing. The old man turned to him, eyes like stone. She is in the place between. The binding is not just for her. You must go as well. I don't care what right this is, Jeremiah growled, trying to rise. Bring her back. You still do not understand, the elder said quietly. She is coming back, but not all of her, and you must choose what to do with what remains. Jeremiah's fists clenched. What does that mean? Speak plain. The elder only pointed to the fire. It flickered, shifted, and then Sina's face appeared in the flames. But it wasn't the Sina he knew. This one was laughing, eyes glowing bright, her hair whipped by wind that didn't exist. She wore a crown of ash and bone. Behind her something towered, an ancient figure, its features obscured but its presence crushing. It loomed like a storm cloud filled with screams. Jeremiah fell back, the breath gone from him. She has awakened what sleeps beneath, the elder murmured. She went seeking healing and stirred the ancient dead instead. You must go after her, alone. I'm not one of you, Jeremiah said, throat raw. I don't know the rights. I don't believe in this. The elder's expression didn't shift. But she believes in you. Jeremiah didn't argue. He couldn't. His heart beat with a single purpose now, get her back. The tribe began to chant again, lower this time, more like a hum vibrating in the marrow of the earth. The fire sank into the ground, revealing a blackened pit beneath. Step in, the elder said. Jeremiah looked at him, then at the tribe, then at the pit. He stepped and fell. There was no bottom. Just endless dark swallowing him whole. He didn't hit the ground. Instead, he landed in water, freezing. He surfaced, coughing, the stench of rot and salt in his nose. It wasn't water. It was blood. He was floating in a lake of it, dark, thick, endless. Far across he saw land, firelight flickering, a figure kneeling before it. Sina! He swam. The blood pulled at him, thick as tar. He swallowed some, gagged, pushed harder. Shapes moved beneath the surface, whispers brushing against his ears, voices that sounded like Sarah, like his father, like himself at 8 years old saying, "Please, please don't leave me." He shouted to drown them out. Finally he crawled ashore, hands trembling, lungs burning. Sina didn't look up. She was painting symbols in the dirt with her finger, over and over. "Sina," he said. She stopped, then turned. Her eyes weren't hers. They were pure white, glowing softly. "I waited for you," she said, voice layered, hers, and something ancient underneath it. "I came," Jeremiah said. "I'll always come." She tilted her head. "You carry death on your shoulders." "I carry grief," he snapped, "not shame." She smiled sadly. "You still whisper to her, to the one before me." "I won't stop loving her." "And I won't ask you to," she whispered. "But I need to know I'm not walking with a ghost." Jeremiah stepped closer. "You're not, I'm here." The ground rumbled beneath them. Behind Sina, the tall figure rose again, clearer now. A woman veiled in shadow, holding a blade made of bone. Her face shimmered between many, a child, an elder, a widow, a bride. She is the spirit of all who have been given without choosing, Sina said. The bound, the betrayed. She answers when we cannot. Is she going to take you? She's going to test you. The spirit raised her blade. Jeremiah moved fast. But it wasn't a fight. The world changed again, whited out, then settled. He was in his old house. Sarah was alive, cooking at the stove, humming, her back to him, her long red braid down her back just like always. Sarah, he whispered. She turned, smiling. Breakfast is ready. Jeremiah felt his knees weaken. She crossed the room, took his hand, kissed his cheek. Everything was as it had been. Warmth light her. Sit, she said. You look tired. He did. The table was set, bread, eggs, coffee. But across from him, Sina sat. Bound, hooded. Bleeding from the wrists. You can eat, Sarah said, setting down a plate. Just don't look at her. Jeremiah stared at Sina. Then at Sarah. This isn't real, he whispered. Sarah smiled, but her teeth were wrong. You're home, she said. You can stay, you don't have to grieve anymore. I forgave you, stay. Sina's head turned. Under the hood her voice rasped out. Are you going to eat while I bleed? Jeremiah stood. I buried you, Sarah. She looked hurt. You don't mean that. I do. I loved you, I lost you, but I'm not yours anymore. The world flickered. Sarah's skin peeled back like paper. Her bones cracked. She screamed. And vanished. The spirit stood again. Only this time, Sina was beside it. Both waiting. You passed, Sina said, but it's not over. The spirit reached for Jeremiah's chest. Pressed the bone blade to his heart. He didn't flinch. He didn't move. He let it cut. The pain was unbearable. He collapsed. But when he opened his eyes, he was back. Back at the fire. Back with the tribe. Sina beside him, her hand over his chest. Tears streaked her cheeks. You came back, he whispered. I never left. The tribe watched in silence. The elder approached, nodded once. You are bound. Jeremiah looked around. Is that it? The elder's face was grave. Now comes the part that cannot be undone. What's that? The blood oath. Sina took his hand. I told you, safe isn't what we're meant to be. The elder stepped back. The tribe began to chant. And blood began to fall from the sky. It rained blood. Not in heavy drops, but in a slow, steady mist, fine and crimson, falling like dusk over the fire-lit clearing. The tribe did not react with fear or awe. They stood perfectly still, as if this was not the first time the heavens had bled to seal a vow. Sina's grip on Jeremiah's hand tightened as the mist painted her hair red and pooled in the hollows of her collarbone. Her voice trembled low in her throat. It's not the blood that binds us. It's what we give up in return. Jeremiah didn't know whether to be afraid or humbled. He only knew one thing. Whatever had taken place in that dream place, that realm where Sarah's ghost fed him breakfast and Sina bled silently across the table, it hadn't been just ritual or metaphor. It had changed him. The cut over his heart still burned. The blade of bone, forged by the spirit of the betrayed, had carved something deeper than flesh. He felt hollowed and filled all at once, as if grief had finally given way to something heavier, belonging. But belonging always costs something. The elder stepped forward, face streaked in red rain. In his hands he carried a ceremonial bowl filled with the thickened blood from the sky. A single strand of sinew hung across the rim, and from it dangled 2 black stones, one larger, one small, bound together with twine. The elder's voice rose, ancient and hoarse. 2 souls, once strangers, one saved, one burdened. By right of the bound flame they are one, but one cannot be made from two unless the past dies in the fire. He turned to Jeremiah. You carry your dead like a weight on your back. Lay them down, or she will carry them too, and you both will drown. Jeremiah met Sina's eyes. She said nothing, but in her expression was a silent challenge. Are you ready to stop mourning long enough to live? He thought of Sarah, of their wedding day, of the miscarriage, of the laughter, of the fever that took her and how he couldn't save her. Then he looked at Sina. She wasn't a replacement. She wasn't a second chance. She was a woman with her own pain, her own scars, and her own haunting. But she had chosen him not once, but again and again. In that forest, in that dream, in that pit between worlds. I loved her, Jeremiah whispered to the bowl, but she's gone and I'm still here. He let go. Of the guilt, of the shame, of the voice that had whispered in every quiet moment since Sarah's death, saying you didn't do enough. The elder lowered the bowl between them. Sina placed her fingers over the surface, and without being told, Jeremiah did the same. The blood hissed beneath their touch, reacting like oil to flame. Then the elder took the stones. He pressed one to Jeremiah's chest, the other to Sina's. When he pulled them away, they both bore marks, burns shaped like rings, encircling the place their hearts beat loudest. You are sealed. A scream split the air. Jeremiah's head snapped toward the sound. It came from the trees, deep, ragged, desperate. More followed, voices, dozens, maybe more. Then the drums began. Not from the tribe, but from beyond, another rhythm, crude, sharp, violent. The elder's expression darkened. They followed her. Who? Jeremiah asked. The ones who put the sack on her head. A sick silence passed through the tribe. Sina didn't look surprised. I told you the forest doesn't let things die. They left me for dead. They thought I was dead, but I was, and now they think they can finish what they started. Jeremiah rose, the burn on his chest pulsing. How many? Too many, the elder said. And not men alone, they brought the carrion dogs. The name meant nothing to Jeremiah until he saw the first one. It stepped out from the tree line like a nightmare given shape. Its skin was taut and hairless, stretched over a skeleton far too large to be natural. Its mouth was wide, toothless, with a tongue that hung black and rotting from its jaw. Its eyes glowed pale blue. It moved with a lurching grace, like a beast that remembered being human. Then came the men. Bandits from the look of them, dozens strong, faces covered in soot, guns slung low, machetes gleaming. At the front stood a man Jeremiah would never forget. Clay, the one who had dragged Sina through the forest, who had put the sack over her head, who had spat on her, laughed at her, and left her for the crows. He looked different now, bigger, drunk on the thrill of unfinished sin. Well, I'll be damned, Clay drawled, voice cutting through the firelight. She's still breathing. He looked at Jeremiah. And she brought herself a husband. That was quick. Sina didn't flinch. She stepped forward, calm, bare feet sinking into the red-mudded earth. You're too late. I'm already wed. Clay laughed. I ain't here to break up no honeymoon, just want what's owed. She owes you nothing, Jeremiah said. Clay smiled like a man with all the time in the world. I think the carrion dogs might disagree. He raised his hand. The beasts lunged. Chaos exploded. The tribe scattered, some running, others drawing weapons of bone and stone, but their numbers were too few. The carrion dogs were swift, too swift. One knocked a woman to the ground and tore into her throat before Jeremiah could even reach for his gun. He fired. The bullet hit. The beast didn't fall. Sina grabbed his arm. Their bodies are dead. You can't kill what's already gone. Then what do I do? Give them a soul. She knelt, drawing a circle in the blood mud, whispering words in a language older than any he knew. The circle hissed. The air around it warped. She dipped her fingers into the soil and dragged it across Jeremiah's chest, over the burn mark left by the binding stone. The pain surged again, brighter this time. When Jeremiah turned back toward the beast, something had changed. The dog hesitated. "You carry fire now," Sina said behind him. "Let it burn." Jeremiah stepped forward, and the air shimmered. The beast lunged. He didn't raise his gun. He screamed. Not in fear, but in rage, in loss, in love. The sound shattered the clearing like glass. The carrion dog collapsed, wailing, its body convulsing until it stopped moving entirely. Black smoke rose from its corpse. Jeremiah fell to his knees. Clay's smile faltered. "Well, that ain't fair," he muttered. He raised his gun. Fired. Jeremiah ducked too slow. But the bullet never hit. Sina had moved, faster than he'd seen her move before. She was in front of him. Bleeding. "No," he screamed. The bullet had struck her shoulder, not fatal, but enough to drop her. Jeremiah caught her. Clay reloaded, smug. "She's always in the way, isn't she?" Something shifted in Jeremiah's chest. The pain of the loss, the fear of history repeating, it ignited something that no spirit or rite could explain. He stood, eyes locked on Clay. "You're not taking her." Clay grinned. "Who's gonna stop me, you?" "No," said a voice behind him. The tribe. Dozens more had emerged from the forest, summoned by the binding, by the blood. Old men, children, women covered in ash and fire paint, all armed. One by one, they stepped into the clearing. Clay's confidence broke. He raised his hand again. The carrion dog snarled. Jeremiah reached into his coat and pulled out a second revolver. Sarah's. He hadn't touched it in years. He raised it, kissed the handle, and fired. The bullet struck Clay square in the chest. He dropped. The carrion dogs let out one final howl, then turned and vanished into the trees. Jeremiah dropped to his knees beside Sina, heart racing, breath ragged. "You all right?" She nodded faintly. "You believed me." "I always did." "No," she whispered, "not just me, in yourself." The elder approached, looked down at them both. "You finished the rite." "No," Jeremiah said, holding her close. "We're just getting started." The night carried no wind, just the hush of settling ash and the ghost of thunder far off in the mountains. Sina lay against Jeremiah's chest, her skin damp with fever, blood dried to the roots of her hair. She was breathing, barely, but breathing. He hadn't cried when his wife died, hadn't cried when he buried his child. But tonight, as he cradled a stranger made kin by fire, by blood, and by fate, he cried. Not because of what he lost, but because somehow, impossibly, he'd found something again. The carrion dogs were dead. The tribe had gathered what little could be salvaged from the fight. Clay's body was burned on a cedar pyre. The flames rose clean. Jeremiah and Sina did not speak through the night. Only when the sun broke across the distant ridge, painting the treetops gold, did she stir. He felt her fingers move before her eyes opened. "You're still here," she whispered. "I am. They told me the rite's sealed now, that you're bound to me." "I was bound the moment I opened that door." She let out a quiet laugh, hoarse and tired. "You're too good at this." "I'm terrible at it, that's why I'm still trying." The elder returned that morning. He brought a leather satchel, food, herbs, a carved stone symbol they said would keep the darker things at bay. "You leave today," the elder said. "We cannot protect you. The thing that spared her may not always be kind." Jeremiah asked the question he hadn't dared voice aloud. What did she survive? The elder looked to Sina. "Tell him." Her voice was soft. They tried to kill me back when I was just a girl. My own kin said something in me was cursed, but I didn't die, and since then it's been in me, waiting. Waiting for what? She didn't answer. They left before noon. Jeremiah helped her onto the raft that had once carried her bound and beaten. Now it held them both, quiet, side by side. Sina watched the trees as they drifted into the current, the branches shivering with wind. He glanced at her. You ever think about going back? She shook her head. Whatever they woke in me, it's awake now. I'm not safe for them, and maybe not for you. You're not going to lose me. You already have. The river bent wide, parting two cliffs. They floated between them, and it felt like crossing into something new, something neither of them could name yet. You still believe in anything? She asked. He thought of his wife, the grave on the hill, the silence he'd come to know too well. I believe in starting over, he said. Sina laid her head against his shoulder, eyes fluttering shut. Then I believe in you. Behind them the forest swallowed the last trace of smoke. The tribe faded into myth. Ahead the river widened. And the story, the one not written yet, the one neither of them had planned, finally began.